A 15-year-old girl walked into a boardroom full of executives. "You know nothing about this business," the CEO laughed, dismissing her with a wave. But when she spoke her father's name, his smile died, and the room exploded. Lily Bennett was 15 years old when she walked into the Thornton Consulting Group headquarters, wearing her best clothes. A blazer from Goodwill and shoes she'd borrowed from her mom because hers had holes in the soles. The receptionist had looked at her like she was lost. "Sweetie, if you're looking for the Career Day program, that's next month." "I have a meeting," Lily had said, showing the email on her phone. "Conference room A, 3 p.m. Now she stood outside that conference room, looking through the glass walls at 12 executives in expensive suits, and tried to remember why she'd thought this was a good idea. Because your father would want you to try. Because Noah needs to see that fighting matters. Because Mom can't keep working 2 jobs forever. Lily pushed open the door. 12 faces turned toward her. Most looked confused. A few looked annoyed. One man at the head of the table, silver hair, sharp suit, the kind of smile that didn't reach his eyes, looked amused. "Can we help you?" he asked. "The high school interns don't start until summer." "I'm not an intern," Lily said, her voice steadier than she felt. "I'm Lily Bennett. I emailed about the Anderson account, the retail restructuring proposal." The man's smile widened. "You're the Bennett who's been flooding my inbox with business plans?" He looked at the other executives. "I thought it was spam. Didn't realize it was a kid playing businesswoman." Several people laughed. Lily felt heat rise to her face but forced herself to stay calm. "I'm not playing," she said. "I have a solution to the Anderson problem. If you just look at my analysis—" "Sweetheart," the man interrupted, leaning back in his chair like he had all the time in the world to humiliate her. "Do you know how many consultants we have working on the Anderson account? 30. All with MBAs from Harvard, Wharton, Stanford. And you think a 15-year-old who probably hasn't even taken economics yet can solve a problem they can't?" "I'm a sophomore at Boston Latin," Lily said. "I've been studying business strategy since I was 11. And yes, I think I can solve it. Because I understand something your consultants don't." Richard Thornton. She recognized him now from the website, the CEO who'd built this company into a powerhouse, gestured grandly. "Please, enlighten us. What do you understand that 30 MBAs don't?" Lily pulled out her laptop. Her hands were shaking, but she managed to connect it to the conference room display. Her presentation appeared on the screen, slides she'd built using her father's old research notes, every night after homework, every weekend, while her mom was at work. "Anderson Retail is failing because they're treating their distribution problem like a logistics issue," Lily began, reading from notes her father had written years ago. "But it's not. It's a behavioral economics problem masked as supply chain inefficiency." She clicked to the next slide, her father's diagrams that she'd digitized, data, charts, patterns he'd identified before he got sick. "This analysis was done by Michael Bennett in 2014, Lily explained. "He predicted exactly what would happen to Anderson if they didn't change course. And he was right. Your consultants are recommending they consolidate warehouses and cut staff. But that's treating the symptom, not the disease. The real problem is that Anderson's middle management is making decisions based on outdated incentive structures that reward individual performance over system efficiency." Lily pulled up another slide. "If you restructure their compensation model to reward collaborative problem-solving instead of individual metrics and implement a decentralized decision-making framework at the distribution level, you'll see a 30% increase in efficiency without cutting a single job." The room had gone quiet. People were actually looking at her slides now instead of checking their phones. "Furthermore," Lily continued, her confidence growing, "this approach has a proven track record. There are 3 case studies from 2018 through 2020 that demonstrate—" "Enough," Richard interrupted. His amusement was gone. Now he just looked irritated. "This is very cute, really. You made some PowerPoint slides and found a few case studies online. But you know nothing about this business, kid. Go back to high school and let the adults handle consulting? I know more than you think, Lily said quietly. Do you? Richard stood up, walking around the table toward her. Do you know how to negotiate a 7-figure contract? Do you know how to manage 30 consultants? Do you know what it takes to build a company from nothing? He was trying to intimidate her, standing too close, using his height and age and authority to make her feel small. But Lily looked up at him and said, I know what it takes to steal one. The room went completely silent. Excuse me? Richard's voice was low, dangerous. This company, Lily said, her voice shaking now, but not with fear, with rage. Thornton Consulting Group. It wasn't built from nothing. It was built on someone else's foundation, someone else's clients, someone else's methodologies. You need to leave, Richard said. Now. Lily's courage faltered. For a moment, she was just a 15-year-old girl who'd borrowed her mom's shoes, standing in a room full of adults who didn't want to hear her. She could feel tears starting. Maybe this was stupid. Maybe she should just go home. But then she thought about her father, about how he'd trusted this man, how he'd died never knowing the truth. Bennett and Thornton Partners, Lily said, her voice stronger now. That was the original name. That was the original name. 15 years ago. 2 founders, Michael Bennett and Richard Thornton. They built a consulting firm together, pioneered new approaches to organizational behavior, won contracts with Fortune 500 companies. We're on track to become one of the most respected firms in Boston. A woman at the table, maybe 50, with kind eyes and a worried expression, leaned forward. How do you know about Bennett and Thornton? Because Michael Bennett was my father, Lily said. Richard's face had gone pale. And 10 years ago, Lily continued, when my father got sick, when he had to take time off for his recovery, his partner convinced him to sell his shares, told him the company was struggling, that it would be better for everyone if Richard bought him out. My dad trusted him, believed him, sold his 50% stake for $100,000 so he could pay for medical bills. Lily pulled up a new slide. A contract. Faded. Scanned from old papers her mother had kept in a box in their closet. 6 months after my dad sold his shares, Thornton Consulting got a $10 million contract with Anderson Retail. A contract my father had been developing for 2 years. A contract that turned this company into what it is today. She looked directly at Richard. My father died 4 years ago, believing he'd made a smart business decision, that he'd gotten out at the right time. He never knew that the partner he trusted had lied to him, had stolen everything he'd built. That's not, Richard started, then stopped himself. That's ancient history twisted by a child who doesn't understand how business partnerships work. Your father made a decision, a legal binding decision. If he had regrets, that's not my problem. But you lied to him, Lily said. You told him. I told him the truth as I saw it, Richard interrupted. The company was struggling. Your father was sick, distracted. I had to make hard decisions to keep us afloat. Buying his shares was the best option for everyone. Except 6 months later, you had a $10 million contract, Lily shot back. Richard's jaw tightened. Business opportunities arise. That's not deception. That's timing. I have documentation, Lily interrupted. She clicked through slides, emails, meeting notes, contract proposals, all with Michael Bennett's name on them, all dated before he sold his shares. Every methodology this company uses, my father developed it. The behavioral economics approach, that was his doctoral thesis. The decentralized decision-making framework, he published a paper on it in 2012. She looked around the room. This entire company is built on my father's ideas, and nobody even knows his name anymore. The woman who'd asked about Bennett and Thornton stood up. I'm Helen Park. I worked with your father 15 years ago. She looked at Richard, then back at Lily. I remember things differently than how they've been told. Dr. Park, sit down, Richard warned. I remember Michael Bennett being brilliant, Helen continued quietly. And I remember a lot of conversations that happened when he wasn't in the room. She didn't say more, but the implication hung heavy in the air. "That's enough," Richard snapped. "This meeting is over. Lily, you need to leave immediately or I'm calling security." "Why?" Lily asked. "Because I'm telling the truth? Because I'm proving that you built your empire on stolen ideas? You're a child who doesn't understand how business works," Richard said. His voice was shaking now. "Your father sold his shares voluntarily. Legal contract. He made his choice. He made his choice because you lied to him," Lily's voice cracked. "You told him the company was failing when you knew the Anderson contract was coming through. You exploited his desperation. He was sick. We were drowning in medical bills. And you—" Tears were streaming down her face now. "You took advantage of that. You stole from a dying man." The room was frozen. Several executives were staring at Richard with new expressions. Shock, disgust, realization. "I was only 11 when my dad died," Lily continued. "The last thing he told me was to be smart in business, to never trust people who value money more than integrity. And I didn't understand what he meant until I found his old files, until I realized what you'd done to him." She closed her laptop. "I didn't come here for the Anderson account. I came here to prove that I inherited my father's mind, that his ideas live on, that he mattered." Lily looked at Richard. "And I came to let you know. I'm not going away. I'm going to make sure everyone knows that Thornton Consulting was built on Bennett methodologies, that every success you claim started with my father's work." "Get out," Richard said. But his voice had no power now. He just sounded scared. As Lily walked toward the door, Helen Park followed her into the hallway. "Lily, wait!" Lily turned, wiping tears from her face. Helen looked around to make sure they were alone. "What you said in there about your father. I need to think about some things. There are files I kept. Things I wasn't sure mattered at the time." She paused. "Can I have your email? If I find what I think I might find, you'll want to see it." "Why are you helping me?" Lily asked. "Because your father believed in me when nobody else did," Helen said quietly. "And because maybe it's time I believed in doing what's right, instead of what's safe." Lily left Thornton Consulting Group that afternoon, feeling like she'd climbed a mountain. Her legs were shaking. Her hands were trembling. But she'd done it. She'd looked her father's betrayer in the eye and told him the truth. On the subway home, Lily's hands were still shaking. She'd done it. She'd actually confronted Richard Thornton. But now what? She had documents. But who would listen to a 15-year-old? That evening, while Lily sat at dinner with her mom and Noah, explaining what had happened, her phone buzzed. One new email. From Email Protected. Subject: Bennett and Thornton Story. Ms. Bennett, I'm Amanda Brooks with the Boston Business Journal. I've been investigating Thornton Consulting for 6 months. Rumors of unethical practices, stolen methodologies, consultants who left due to concerns about integrity. I heard you were at their office today. I'd like to talk. This could be the story that changes everything. Amanda. Lily stared at the email. Then she thought about her father, about the way he used to explain business strategy at the dinner table, turning napkins into diagrams, teaching her and Noah that solving problems was about understanding people, not just numbers, about how he'd apologized before he died, apologized for not leaving them with more, for not being successful enough, for selling his shares when maybe he should have fought. He'd thought he'd failed, but he'd actually created something brilliant, something worth $10 million, something worth fighting for. Lily typed a response. I'll talk. I have documentation, and I want the truth to come out. Sent. By the time she got home, Amanda had responded with a meeting time. By the time she sat down for dinner with her mom and Noah, explaining what had happened, Rachel was crying and laughing at the same time. Your father would be so proud, Rachel said. You stood up to Richard Thornton, 15 years old, and you walked into that boardroom like you owned it. I was terrified, Lily admitted. Being brave doesn't mean not being scared, Rachel said. It means doing the right thing anyway. Noah, who'd been quiet through the whole explanation, looked at his sister with big eyes. "Are you going to get Dad's company back?" "I don't know," Lily said honestly, "but I'm going to make sure everyone knows it was his, that Dad created those ideas, that he mattered." Across Boston, in his penthouse office, Richard Thornton sat alone. His phone kept ringing. Board members, major clients, people who'd seen executives leaving the meeting early, talking, spreading the story of the 15-year-old girl who'd accused him of theft. Helen Park had resigned effective immediately. 3 other executives had requested emergency meetings with HR. And worst of all, Richard had Googled Michael Bennett consultant and found his old partner's obituary. Michael Bennett, 45, passed away after a 4-year battle with a serious illness. He is survived by his wife Rachel and children Lily and Noah. Michael was a visionary in organizational psychology and will be remembered by all who knew him as a man of integrity and brilliance. Richard had convinced himself that what he'd done was just business, that Michael had made a choice to sell, that the $100,000 had been fair compensation. But looking at that obituary, at the man who'd trusted him, who'd built a company with him, who died never knowing he'd been betrayed, Richard felt something he hadn't felt in years: shame. And the realization that a 15-year-old girl had just destroyed everything he'd spent a decade building. Because Lily Bennett had something Richard didn't: the truth. And in the age of social media, viral stories and corporate accountability, truth was more powerful than money. The Boston Business Journal offices smelled like coffee and old paper. Lily sat across from Amanda Brooks in a small conference room, her mother beside her for support. Amanda had kind eyes but a reporter's sharp focus, the kind of person who noticed everything. "Tell me about your father," Amanda said, recorder on the table between them. Lily pulled out the folder she'd brought. Inside were papers her mother had kept in a storage box for years. Things Rachel couldn't bear to look at after Michael died, but couldn't bring herself to throw away. "My dad was a consultant," Lily began, "but not the kind who just tells companies what they want to hear. He actually solved problems. He believed business should make people's lives better, not just make money." She showed Amanda the first document, a partnership agreement dated 15 years ago. Bennett and Thornton partners, 50-50 ownership. My dad and Richard Thornton were going to build something that mattered. They had this vision, consulting that focused on people, not just profits. Amanda studied the document, taking notes. "And what happened?" "My dad got sick," Lily said quietly. "He faced a very serious health challenge. Our insurance covered some of it, but we were drowning in bills. Physical therapy, medications, experimental treatments. We were desperate." Rachel's hand found Lily's under the table, squeezed. "Richard came to our house," Lily continued. "I was 5, so I don't remember it clearly, but my mom does. He brought flowers, told my dad that the company was struggling, that they weren't going to make it, that the best thing Michael could do for his family was sell his shares, use the money for his care, and not worry about a failing business. And your father believed him," Amanda said. "My dad trusted him," Lily corrected. "They were partners, friends, or so Dad thought." She pulled out another document, a check stub, $100,000, dated 10 years ago. 6 months after Dad sold his shares, Thornton Consulting got the Anderson retail contract, $10 million, using methodologies my father developed, and Dad never knew. He died 4 years ago thinking he'd made the smart choice, that he'd gotten out of a sinking ship. Amanda's pen moved rapidly across her notepad. "You said you have documentation proving these methodologies were your father's?" Lily pulled out her father's old notebooks, worn covers, pages filled with diagrams and notes in careful handwriting. Behavioral economics approaches to organizational change, decentralized decision-making frameworks. Everything Thornton Consulting is famous for. My dad invented it. These notebooks are dated between 2009 and 2014, before he sold his shares. Amanda photographed several pages. And you presented this at Thornton Consulting yesterday. I tried, Lily said. Richard dismissed me, called me a kid who didn't understand business. But one of the executives, Dr. Helen Park, she worked with my dad. She remembered. As if on cue, Lily's phone buzzed. Email from Helen Park. Lily, I found the files. Can we meet? Lily showed her mother. Rachel nodded. Can we pause the interview? Lily asked Amanda. I need to follow up on something. Actually, Amanda said, mind if I come with you? This story is bigger than I thought, and I want to be there when the next piece falls into place. They met Helen at a coffee shop in Cambridge, far from Thornton Consulting's offices. Helen looked different than she had in the boardroom. Smaller somehow, less polished, like she'd been awake all night. She placed a flash drive on the table. 15 years of emails, Helen said. Meeting notes, contract proposals, all with timestamps and Michael's name as primary author. She looked at Lily with tired eyes. I kept them because I knew what Richard did was wrong, but I was scared. I had student loans, a mortgage, a career I couldn't afford to lose. Why now? Rachel asked. Because I watched a 15-year-old have more courage than I've had in a decade, Helen said simply. And because Michael Bennett deserved better than what we gave him. Amanda was already looking through the files on her laptop. Her eyes widened. This is incredible. Emails from Richard to investors describing Michael's methodologies as our approach. Contract proposals with Michael's analysis but only Richard's signature. Meeting notes where Richard explicitly tells people not to mention Michael's name to clients. She looked up at Lily. This isn't just unethical. This could be fraud. Will you write about it? Lily asked. I'll do better than that, Amanda said. I'll make sure the whole city knows what Richard Thornton really is. The article published online that evening. The Stolen Legacy of Michael Bennett, How Thornton Consulting Was Built on a Dying Man's Ideas. Lily read it on her phone while Noah did homework at the kitchen table. The story was comprehensive, devastating, fair. It included quotes from Helen, photographs of Michael's notebooks, copies of emails showing Richard systematically erasing Michael's name from company history. And it ended with a question. If Bennett's methodologies are the foundation of Thornton Consulting's success, what does the company owe his family? Within an hour, the story had been shared 3,000 times. By morning, it was trending on Boston Twitter. Lily's phone wouldn't stop buzzing. Messages from strangers offering support, from reporters wanting interviews, from lawyers offering to help, and one text that made her hands shake. From Dr. Helen Park. I resigned this morning. So did 4 other executives who worked with your father. We can't be part of covering this up anymore. At Thornton Consulting headquarters, Richard Thornton sat in an emergency board meeting. 5 executives resigned overnight, the chairman said. Major clients are calling asking if the journal story is true. Our stock dropped 12% this morning. It's a hit piece, Richard insisted. 1 disgruntled former employee and a teenager with her father's old notebooks. It doesn't prove anything. It proves enough to raise questions, another board member said. Questions our clients are asking. Questions we can't answer. What do you want me to do? Richard demanded. We want you to tell us the truth, the chairman said quietly. Did you build this company on Michael Bennett's work? Richard was silent. Did you remove his name from contracts and proposals? The chairman pressed. Still silent. Did you lie to him about the company's prospects so you could buy his shares cheaply? It was more complicated than that, Richard finally said. That's not a denial, the chairman observed. The board voted that afternoon. Richard Thornton would step down as CEO, effective immediately, pending a full investigation into the company's founding. Lily learned about it from Amanda, who called as soon as the press release went out. He's gone, Amanda said. Stepped down an hour ago. The board is conducting a formal review of all contracts and methodologies to determine what originated with your father. Lily sat down. her legs suddenly weak. "We did it?" "You did it," Amanda corrected. A 15-year-old girl walked into a boardroom and told the truth. And the truth was powerful enough to bring down a CEO. That evening, the family gathered in their small living room, Lily, Rachel, and Noah. "Mom," Noah asked, "does this mean we won?" Rachel pulled both her children close. "It means your father's name will be remembered. It means people know the truth. That's the most important kind of winning." "What happens now?" Lily asked. "I don't know," Rachel admitted. "But your father would be so proud of you, both of you, for being brave, for fighting for what's right." Noah looked at his sister with wide eyes. "You made the CEO quit. That's so cool." Despite everything, Lily laughed. "I just told the truth, Noah. That's all." "Yeah, but it was Dad's truth," Noah said. "And now everybody knows." Lily's phone buzzed again. Another email. This one from a law firm. "Ms. Bennett, we represent several executives who worked with your father at Bennett and Thornton Partners. They're interested in discussing restitution for the Bennett family and proper attribution of your father's work. Would you be willing to meet?" Lily showed her mother. Rachel read it twice, tears streaming down her face. "Restitution. They want to pay us for what they stole from your father." "Is that okay?" Lily asked. "Taking money? Does it make it seem like Dad's legacy can be bought?" "Your father's legacy is his ideas," Rachel said firmly. "His belief that business should help people. His methodologies that actually work. That can't be bought." She wiped her eyes. "But we deserve compensation for what was taken from us. Your father would want us to be practical, not just principled." She looked at her daughter. 15 years old, braver than Rachel had ever been. "You did something I couldn't do," Rachel said. "You fought for him when I was too tired, too scared, too broken. You made sure his name mattered." "We did it together," Lily said. "You kept his notebooks. You remembered the truth. I just shared it." That night, Lily couldn't sleep. She opened her father's oldest notebook, the one from 2009, and read his handwriting. "Business Ethics, Day 1. The goal isn't to win. The goal is to solve problems in ways that make everyone better off. If you have to cheat, lie, or steal to succeed, you haven't succeeded. You've just moved the problem somewhere else." Underneath, a note in the margin. "Remember this, Lily. When you're older and you're making hard choices, character matters more than profit." He'd written her name in a business notebook from when she was 4 years old. Like he'd known. Like he'd always known she'd be the one to carry forward what he'd started. Lily took a photo of the page and posted it on social media with a simple caption. "My father, Michael Bennett, taught me that truth matters more than comfort. This week I learned he was right. And I learned that sometimes a 15-year-old's voice can be loud enough to change things. Don't let people tell you you're too young to matter. Don't let them dismiss your truth because you're not qualified. If you know something is wrong, say it. Even if your voice shakes. Especially if your voice shakes. Dad, I hope I made you proud." Posted. By morning, it had 50,000 shares. By afternoon, news outlets across the country were picking up the story. And by evening, Lily Bennett, 15 years old, daughter of Michael Bennett, fighter for truth, had become the face of a conversation about ethics, integrity, and corporate accountability. All because she'd walked into a boardroom and refused to be silent. All because she'd loved her father enough to fight for his name. All because truth, in the end, was more powerful than any lie. The law offices of Morrison & Chen occupied the 23rd floor of a building overlooking Boston Harbor. Lily sat between her mother and their new attorney, a woman named Sarah Mitchell, who'd taken their case pro bono after reading Amanda's article. Across the conference table sat 3 representatives from Thornton Consulting's board, 2 corporate lawyers, and a mediator. Richard Thornton was not there. The board had made it clear. He was no longer welcome at negotiations concerning his own misconduct. "Let's begin," the mediator said. "Ms. Mitchell, You've submitted documentation supporting the Bennett family's claim that Michael Bennett's intellectual property forms the foundation of Thornton Consulting's methodologies. The board has reviewed this documentation. Mr. Harrison, would you like to respond? The lead board member, a man in his 60s with tired eyes, cleared his throat. We've conducted an extensive internal review, he said. Examined contracts, proposals, and meeting records from 2009 through 2016. The conclusion is, he paused, looking directly at Lily and Rachel, inescapable. Michael Bennett was the primary architect of what became Thornton Consulting's core approach. His name was systematically removed from documentation after he sold his shares, and the circumstances of that sale were, at minimum, ethically compromised. Rachel's hand found Lily's under the table. What does that mean? Lily asked. It means, Sarah said firmly, that your father's work was stolen, and Thornton Consulting owes your family compensation. The board's lawyer slid a document across the table. We're prepared to offer a settlement, $5 million, plus a formal public acknowledgement of Michael Bennett's contributions. Rachel gasped. Lily stared at the number, unable to process it. $5 million. More money than her family had ever imagined. More than enough to pay off their debts, to send both kids to college, to stop Rachel from working 2 jobs. But Sarah Mitchell didn't look impressed. $5 million is insulting, she said calmly. Thornton Consulting is valued at $200 million. 80% of their methodology came from Michael Bennett's work. You're offering 2.5% of what his contributions generated. We're also offering to rename the company, Mr. Harrison said quietly. Bennett Thornton Consulting, with Michael Bennett listed as founding partner in all materials. Lily looked at her mother. Rachel was crying, but trying to hide it. Can we have a moment? Sarah asked. The other side left the room. Sarah turned to Rachel and Lily. They're lowballing us, Sarah said bluntly. We could push for 20 million, maybe more, but litigation could take years, and there's no guarantee. What do you think we should do? Rachel asked. I think, Sarah said carefully, that you should ask yourselves what Michael would have wanted. Is this about the money, or about his name? Lily thought about her father's notebook. Character matters more than profit. It's about his name, Lily said. I want people to know who he was, what he created. That matters more than the money. But the money matters too, Rachel added softly. Michael would want his children to have opportunities, to not struggle the way we have. Sarah nodded. So we negotiate. Push them higher on the settlement, but accept the name change. Make sure Michael Bennett is remembered. When the board returned, Sarah was ready. $10 million, she said. Company renamed Bennett Thornton Consulting. Michael Bennett credited as founding partner and primary architect of all core methodologies. Annual scholarship in his name for students studying organizational psychology. And a formal public apology from the board acknowledging what was done to him. Mr. Harrison looked at his colleagues, whispered conversation. Then, we accept. Just like that, it was over. $10 million. Michael Bennett's name restored, his legacy preserved. Lily felt like she couldn't breathe. There's one more thing, Mr. Harrison said. The board would like to invite the Bennett family to a public ceremony next month, to formally recognize Michael's contributions and announce the company's renaming. We think, he paused, we think the public deserves to hear the whole story. And Michael's family deserves to tell it. Rachel looked at Lily. What do you think? I think Dad would want people to learn from this, Lily said. Would want other companies to see what happens when you steal from people who trust you. Then we'll be there, Rachel said. The ceremony was held 4 weeks later in the Boston Convention Center. 500 people attended. Business leaders, consultants, former employees of Bennett and Thornton Partners, reporters, students. The room was packed. Lily stood backstage with her mother and Noah, wearing a dress Rachel had bought specifically for this occasion. The first new dress Lily had owned in 2 years that wasn't from a thrift store. "I'm scared," Lily admitted. "You stood up to Richard Thornton in his own boardroom," Rachel reminded her. "You can do this." "But there are so many people." "They're here because of you," Rachel said. "Because you were brave enough to tell the truth. Now finish what you started." The moderator, a business ethics professor from Harvard, introduced Lily. "Today we're here to right a wrong that should never have happened, to restore the name of a man whose brilliance was stolen, whose trust was betrayed, whose legacy was nearly erased. And we're here because his daughter refused to let that erasure stand. Please welcome Lili Bennett." The applause was overwhelming. Lily walked to the podium on shaking legs. 500 faces looked back at her, cameras recording, reporters taking notes. She pulled out her father's notebook, the one from 2009, the one with her name in the margin, and placed it on the podium. "My name is Lili Bennett," she began, her voice barely audible, then stronger. "I'm 15 years old, and 4 years ago, my father, Michael Bennett, died believing he'd failed." The room was silent. "He thought he'd made bad business decisions, that he'd sold his company at the wrong time, that he hadn't provided enough for his family, and I believed that too. We all did." Lily opened the notebook to the page she'd bookmarked. "But then I found these, my father's notebooks, filled with ideas that changed how businesses think about people, about ethics, about doing well by doing good." She looked up at the audience. "And I realized my father hadn't failed. He'd been stolen from." She told the story. All of it. The partnership, the betrayal, the buyout when Michael was desperate and sick, the $10 million contract that came 6 months later. Richard Thornton's systematic erasure of Michael's name from everything he'd created. "My father trusted the wrong person," Lily said, "and that person took advantage of his trust, his illness, his desperation, built an empire on my dad's ideas and never once gave him credit." She could see people in the audience wiping tears. "But here's what I learned. Truth is more powerful than theft. A 15-year-old with her father's notebooks and a refusal to stay silent can bring down a CEO who thought he was untouchable, because lies require everyone's cooperation, and truth only requires one person brave enough to speak it." Lily held up the notebook. "This is my father's handwriting, his ideas, his belief that business should make the world better. And now, finally, everyone will know these ideas were his." She looked directly at the camera she knew was streaming this live. "If you're watching this, and you're young, if people tell you that you don't matter because you're just a kid, don't believe them. Your voice matters. Your truth matters. Don't let anyone silence you because of your age or your experience or anything else. If something is wrong, say it. Even if your voice shakes." The applause started before she finished speaking, a standing ovation that went on for minutes. When Lily returned to her seat, Noah hugged her tight. "That was amazing," he whispered. Then Mr. Harrison took the podium. "On behalf of the board of Thornton Consulting," he paused, "of Bennett Thornton Consulting, I want to formally apologize to the Bennett family. We failed Michael Bennett. We allowed his contributions to be erased. We benefited from his brilliance without acknowledging it. That ends today." He unveiled a plaque that would hang in the company's headquarters. Bennett Thornton Consulting, founded by Michael Bennett and Richard Thornton, 2011. Core methodologies developed by Michael Bennett, 2009, 2016. Character matters more than profit. Michael Bennett. The audience applauded again. After the ceremony, dozens of people approached Lily. Business leaders who wanted to share their own stories of being cheated. Students who said she'd inspired them. Reporters asking for interviews. But the person who surprised Lily most was standing at the back of the crowd. Richard Thornton. He looked different. Smaller. Older. The arrogance was gone, replaced by something that looked like genuine remorse. "I don't expect you to talk to me, Richard said quietly. "I don't deserve that, but I wanted to be here, to witness what I tried to erase." Lily looked at the man who'd betrayed her father. Part of her wanted to scream at him, to make him feel the pain her family had felt. But she thought about her father's words. "Character matters more than profit." "My dad trusted you," Lily said. "He thought you were his friend. And you used that against him when he was most vulnerable. That's not business. That's cruelty." "I know," Richard said. His voice cracked. "I told myself it was just business, that Michael would have done the same. But I knew. I always knew it was wrong. And I did it anyway because I wanted the success more than I valued the friendship." "Why are you telling me this?" "Because you deserve to hear me admit it," Richard said. "Your father deserved a partner who honored his trust. Instead, he got me, and I stole from him. Not just his ideas or his credit. I stole his chance to see his children grow up knowing he'd succeeded. I stole his peace of mind in his final years." Tears were running down Richard's face now. "I can't undo what I did," he continued. "I can't give you back your father, or give him back the years he spent thinking he'd failed. But I want you to know, he didn't fail. He created something brilliant. And you made sure the world knows it was his." Lily didn't know what to say. She was 15. She didn't have words for this kind of complicated pain and anger and grief. So she just said, "Don't ever do this to anyone else." "I won't," Richard promised. "I'm done with consulting, done with business. I'm spending whatever time I have left trying to make sure other young consultants understand what I should have learned. Your integrity is worth more than any contract." He started to walk away, then turned back. "Your father would be proud of you, Lily. Not because you brought me down. Because you stood up for what was right even when it was hard. That's who Michael was. And that's who you are." Then he was gone. That evening, the Bennett family sat in their living room. The same room where they'd struggled through medical bills and grief and poverty. But everything felt different now. Rachel held the settlement check. $10 million. A number that would change everything. "What do we do with this?" she asked quietly. "We invest some," Lily said. "For college, for the future. But we also give some away. Start a fund for families dealing with medical debt. Because Dad would want us to help people the way we wish someone had helped us. The Michael Bennett Medical Assistance Fund," Noah suggested. Rachel smiled through tears. He'd love that. They sat together in comfortable silence until Noah spoke again. "Lily, do you think Dad knows what you did for him?" Lily thought about the notebook with her name in the margin. About her father writing "Remember this, Lily" when she was 4 years old. "Yeah," she said. "I think he always knew." That night, Lily's speech from the ceremony went viral. 2 million views in 24 hours. The hashtag #SharkTruth Matters trending worldwide. Young people posting about times they'd been dismissed because of their age. Employees sharing stories of stolen credit. Families talking about medical debt and desperation. Lily Bennett, 15 years old, daughter of Michael Bennett, fighter for truth, had started something bigger than she'd realized. Not just a story about one stolen legacy. A conversation about integrity, accountability, and the power of refusing to stay silent. And somewhere, Lily believed, her father was watching. Proud not because she'd won, but because she'd remembered what he'd taught her. Character matters more than profit. Truth matters more than comfort. And one voice, speaking honestly, can change everything. The morning sun filtered through the windows of Boston Latin School as Lily Bennett stood backstage, waiting for her cue. 1 year had passed since she'd walked into Richard Thornton's office. 365 days since a 15-year-old girl with borrowed shoes had stood in front of 12 executives and revealed a truth that would change everything. Now 16, a junior, Lily barely recognized the nervous girl she'd been. The past year had transformed her, not just through the settlement or the media attention, but through something deeper. She'd discovered what her father had always known, that speaking truth, even when it costs you everything, is the only way to live with yourself. Lily, the school coordinator touched her shoulder. You're on in 2 minutes. Lily nodded, checking her phone one last time. A text from Noah. Good luck. Dad would be so proud. She smiled. Her little brother was 11 now, growing tall and thoughtful, asking questions about business and ethics that reminded her so much of their father. It sometimes hurt to breathe. The auditorium held 500 students. Not all of them wanted to be there. This was a mandatory assembly after all. But as Lily walked to the podium, she saw enough engaged faces to know that some of them, at least, were ready to hear what she had to say. A lot of you know my story, Lily began, her voice steady from months of practice. The viral video, the settlement, the hashtag #TruthMatters that trended for 3 days. But that's not the story I want to tell you today. She clicked to her first slide. Her father's photo, Michael Bennett at 35, standing in his office, surrounded by notebooks and diagrams, looking like someone who believed he could change the world. This is my dad, Michael Bennett. He died when I was 11, and for years I believed he'd failed, that his life's work hadn't mattered, that we were poor because he'd made bad decisions, sold his company at the wrong time, given up when he should have fought. The room was quiet now. Even the students who'd been on their phones were paying attention. But I was wrong, Lily continued. My dad didn't fail. He was stolen from. And that difference, between failure and theft, matters more than I can explain. Because if you fail, it's on you to learn and do better. But if someone steals from you, that's about their character, not yours. She told them the story, not the sanitized version, but the real one, about finding her father's notebooks, about walking into Thornton Consulting wearing a Goodwill blazer and shoes with holes, about Richard Thornton laughing at her, dismissing her as a child who knew nothing about business. He told me to go back to high school, Lily said, that I was wasting their time, and for a moment, I almost left, because he was right. I was just a kid. What did I know? She paused, looking out at the students. But then I thought about my dad, about how he'd trusted someone who betrayed him, about how he died believing he'd failed when really, he'd created something brilliant that someone else had stolen. And I realized, if I walked out of that room without speaking, the lie would become truth. My father's name would stay erased, and I couldn't live with that. A hand went up. A freshman girl in the 3rd row, wearing glasses and looking nervous. Yes? But you had proof, right? Your dad's notebooks. What if you don't have proof? What if it's just your word against someone more powerful? Lily smiled. It was the question she'd been asked 100 times, and she still didn't have a perfect answer. Honestly, sometimes you lose, she said. Sometimes powerful people win because they have better lawyers, more money, more influence. But speaking up isn't just about winning. It's about refusing to let lies become the accepted truth. It's about looking at yourself in the mirror and knowing you tried. She clicked to another slide. Her father's notebook. The page with her name written in the margin. My dad wrote this when I was 4 years old. Remember this, Lily. Like he knew. Like he always knew I'd be the one to finish what he started. Several students were wiping tears now. Another hand went up. A senior boy in a varsity jacket. The settlement was $10 million, right? Did the money change your life? Yes, Lily said without hesitation. My mom doesn't work 2 jobs anymore. My brother and I don't worry about college tuition. We have a house with a yard. The money changed everything. She paused, making sure they heard what came next. But money wasn't the point. The point was my father's name. The point was making sure Bennett Thornton Consulting credits Michael Bennett as a founding partner. That students get scholarships in his name. That families drowning in medical debt get help from the foundation we created. The money gave us options. The truth gave us dignity. And after the assembly, 15 students from the Future Business Leaders Club crowded into a classroom for a more intimate conversation. "How did you know the settlement was fair?" a girl named Maya asked. "How did you know they weren't still cheating you?" Lily pulled out her laptop, showing them the spreadsheet she'd spent weeks creating. Revenue projections, industry comparisons, detailed analysis of what Thornton Consulting was actually worth. "I learned that you can't just trust people to be fair," she explained. "You have to verify everything. Do the math yourself, understand the numbers, because knowledge is the only real power you have when you're negotiating with people who have more money and experience." A quiet boy in the back spoke up. "Do you ever wish you hadn't done it? Was it worth all the stress and publicity?" Lily thought about the sleepless nights, the panic attacks before interviews, the strangers who approached her in public, some supportive, some angry, that she'd destroyed a successful businessman's career. "Sometimes I wish I could be invisible again," she admitted. "There were days when I was so tired of being that girl who took down Richard Thornton, when I just wanted to be a normal teenager worried about normal things." She looked at the boy. "But then Noah asks me questions about Dad, about business ethics, about how to know who to trust. And he's growing up knowing his father was brilliant, that his ideas changed how companies work. And I think about the 200 families who've gotten medical debt relief, the 50 students with full scholarships, the ripple effect of people choosing integrity because they heard our story." Lily smiled. "Yeah, it was worth it." That evening, the Michael Bennett Foundation held its first annual gala at the Boston Convention Center, the same venue where Lily had given her speech a year ago. The transformation was stunning. What had been a sparse ceremony with 500 people was now an elegant event with crystal chandeliers, a live string quartet, and 700 guests in formal attire. Business leaders, students, families who'd been helped by the foundation, and reporters documenting the organization's growth. The foundation had exceeded every projection. With the $10 million settlement as seed funding, plus donations from businesses inspired by Michael's story, they distributed over $3 million in their first year. 200 families had received medical debt assistance, with an average relief of $15,000 per family. 50 students had gotten full scholarships, not just tuition, but housing, books, and living expenses for 4 years of undergraduate study in business ethics or organizational psychology. And the mentorship program had connected 80 young people with ethical business professionals who'd pledged to honor their mentees' contributions and never exploit their ideas. Lily stood in the wings, watching the crowd, feeling overwhelmed by what her father's legacy had become. "Nervous?" her mother asked, appearing beside her. "You're the one giving the speech," Lily pointed out. Rachel smiled. She looked different than she had a year ago. The exhaustion was gone from her eyes. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost from stress and overwork. Her dress was new, fitted, elegant. She looked like herself again, or maybe like a version of herself that had been buried under years of struggle and finally emerged. "I'm terrified," Rachel admitted, "but in a good way. Your father would have loved this. Seeing his ideas help so many people, seeing his name honored. He'd be proud of you," Lily said. "Managing the foundation, making sure every dollar goes to families who need it." "He'd be proud of you," Rachel corrected, "for being brave enough to start all this." When Rachel walked to the podium, the room fell silent. "Thank you all for coming," she began. "A year ago, my daughter Lily stood on this stage and told you about my husband Michael, about how his trust was betrayed, his work stolen, his name erased from the company he helped build." She gestured to Lily in the front row with Noah beside her. "Tonight isn't about what was taken from us. It's about what we're building with what we got back. The Michael Bennett Foundation exists because my husband believed that business should make people's lives better. That success without integrity is just greed with better marketing." Rachel's voice wavered slightly, but she pushed through. "Michael died 4 years ago, not knowing that his ideas would help thousands of people, that his name would be remembered, that his children would carry forward his belief in doing well by doing good. She held up the notebook, the one from 2009 with Lily's name in the margin. This was Michael's first notebook when he and Richard Thornton started their partnership. On the first page, he wrote, "We're going to build something that matters. Not just profits, but purpose. Not just success, but significance." Rachel looked directly at the camera recording the event. "My husband built something that mattered. And even though it was stolen from him, even though he died never knowing its full impact, his purpose survived. His significance endured. Because truth is more resilient than theft. And love," tears streamed down her face now, "love is stronger than betrayal." The standing ovation lasted 5 minutes. Afterward, as guests mingled over champagne and hors d'oeuvres, Lily was approached by a woman in her 30s with warm eyes and an uncertain smile. "Lily Bennett, I'm Dr. Jennifer Chen. I'm starting my own consulting practice next year, and I wanted to thank you." "For what?" Lily asked. "For making me brave enough to do this." Jennifer gestured to her business card. "I read about your father, about how his partner stole his work, and I realized I've been working for other people's firms for 10 years, always afraid my ideas would be taken. Your story made me understand that I'd rather build something ethical from scratch than keep risking my work being stolen." She handed Lily the card. "If your foundation ever needs consulting on measuring social impact, I'd be honored to help. Pro bono. As a thank you to Michael Bennett for teaching me, through his story, to value integrity over everything." Throughout the evening, similar conversations unfolded. A venture capitalist who'd restructured all his partnership agreements after hearing about Michael. A graduate student who'd switched her thesis to business ethics because of the foundation's work. A father of 3 who'd been buried under medical debt and now, debt-free, was starting a charity to help other families. Michael Bennett's legacy wasn't just methodologies or consulting approaches. It was the ripple effect. People choosing better because they'd seen what happened when someone chose worse. Late that night, the Bennett family sat in their living room. A real living room, in a real house, in a safe neighborhood with good schools. It was modest by some standards. 3 bedrooms, 1 bathroom and a half, a small yard. Nothing like Richard Thornton's penthouse or the mansions in the suburbs. But it was theirs, bought with settlement money, filled with photos of Michael, warm and comfortable and home. "Mom?" Noah asked, curled up on the couch between his mother and sister. "If Dad could see us now, what would he say?" Rachel pulled both children close. "I think he'd say he's proud," she said. "Not because we got money or recognition, but because we didn't let what happened to us make us bitter. Because we took something terrible and used it to help other people. That's who your father was, and that's who he'd want you to be." "I miss him," Noah said quietly. "Me too,"